Okay. Media recording notice. I'm doing a screen recording right now, and so if you ask a question or something like that, I'm gonna tell you that your voice might be on the recording, and we share that afterwards. So Mason Competitive Cyber. This is what we're about. We were created in 2016. Our main focus is competitions. So those are things like CTFs, capture the flags, which are things, they can be in different formats. One of the formats is you have a server. The server has something like a flag.txt file on it, and your team has to control the server and specifically control that specific file. So you try to hack the server, and then once you're in, you try to secure the server. But the most common type of CTF that we do is called the Jeopardy style CTF. So an example of that is our training CTF, which is at tctf.competitivecyber.club. You can check that out if you don't know what a CTF looks like. And it's basically a bunch of different questions. There's different categories. So the web category, it might ask you to hack a website, and the more points there are for a question, the harder it is, and the more time it'll take you. The way the CTFs work is they're usually over a weekend. So they'll give you like 48 hours over a weekend. You can use as much time or as little time as you want over those 48 hours. You can spend 15 minutes. You can spend your entire weekend doing it. And if you want to participate in the CTF, you just join our Slack, which is on our website, competitivecyber.club. You can click a button and it'll send you an email to join it. And then we have different Slack channels for each competition. So for example, Sheriff CTF, that's coming up. So if you want to do that, or you just want to see what it's like, there's no obligation to actually participate if you're in a channel, and you can join that. So some changes have been made this year. If you've ever heard of Patriot hackers, they no longer exist anymore. They existed last semester, but they sort of fizzled out, and not many people went to their meetings anymore. So now they no longer exist, and that's important because their original mission as a student org was like general cybersecurity. So we were only able to be filed and created as a student organization because we were specifically focused on competition. Now that Patriot Hackers doesn't exist anymore, we can cover any cybersecurity topic we want. So that should make meetings more interesting this semester. We focus on hands-on work, so usually it's about half the time, or a little less or a little more, of someone, me, Michael, any of you who knows something, talking, and then the other half is going to be practical hands-on experience where we say, here's a website, or here's a vulnerable web app, hack it, here's some forensics challenges, you need to do them, and then we would walk around and help you if you have any issues. So we chat on Slack a lot, so if you're not in our Slack and you're interested in joining our organization, you should do that. You can, again, reach that at competitivecyber.club. Pretty much everything is available on our website or in our Slack. So we record our meetings on the screen, and then we publish them. We have our slides up in Slack and on our website. We have a virtual machine with all the pre-installed tools that you need. We have a bunch and then we have links to decent resources. Sometimes we do social events as well, like watching movies in the JC cinema. So last semester, this is one of the changes. There used to be a basic section, and there was an advanced section. So the basic section was covering like the different categories of CTFs and how to solve the easy questions in them and the medium questions in them. And then the advanced track was covering more harder things like reverse engineering. But this semester, since now we have more leeway on what we can cover because Patriot Hackers doesn't exist anymore, we can do whatever cybersecurity topic we want, we're doing a green and a yellow track. So it's like if you've ever been to a cybersecurity conferences, they have multiple tracks. They're just different topics. So whichever topic that you like more, you can go to. This is going to be, so this topic is recon and attacking hosts. The other topic in the other room that's happening right now is recon and attacking web apps. This is as close as they're going to get. Usually they're going to be completely different. So that way we can get at least one that you're interested in. So if you have never seen a CTF before or you want to check out our CTF, go to tctf.competitivecyber.club and sign up. And it's always active. There's no prizes. It's just for you to see what it's like. So this is what we do at meetings. We teach the methodologies of attacking and defending and doing whatever we're doing. We teach how do you use certain tools that are useful in CTFs. A lot of tools are useful in the real world as well. We try to stick to those. Some tools are only useful in CTFs, so you can just ignore those if you're not interested in that. And then exploitation tactics, we're going to be doing a little more of that this semester, so that's more like pen testing. We're not going to cover boring stuff. We're not going to go over the OSI model. We're not going to go over how TCP/IP works. That's what your classes are for. We don't do that. We did have a Linux fest that was outside of meetings for people who didn't know Linux at all, because that's really important. But we're not doing that in meetings. So yeah, and then we're not talking about anything that you need massive amounts of prerequisite knowledge to know. You can show up and you can know nothing, and then hopefully we can help you out. Do you have a question?
Or? No, I was just saying. Yeah, I know nothing.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
When will you guys do more of the Linux stuff outside of class? Is there a time and date?
No. We had a Linux fest, so a full day of teaching people Linux last semester. We don't have a date for that this semester. But we do have resources for learning Linux, if you don't know it. No, I'll give you links to that later. Yeah, so if you're interested in joining our club, there's multiple things you can do. You can speak. I don't have to speak. You can speak. Sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about until 2 weeks before I present. Most of the time I do though. And then, or you can just communicate in Slack and ask questions if you have any questions about cybersecurity. There's a lot of people who know a lot of stuff about cybersecurity in our Slack. There's people who know so much about reverse engineering that I will never know. So if you want to learn from other people, that's a good resource. You can compete. There's no barrier to entry for competing. If we'll let you know if there's some competitions which have a team cap, but a lot of CTFs don't. So we can have 40 people on a team, and that'll be fine. And then even if you're just observing what other people are doing, and you don't figure out anything for yourself, you learn that way. You can also make friends. Like I said, there's a lot of people who know what they're doing in this club. There's a fair amount of people who are still learning and don't know that much yet, but you can make friends with them too and then learn together. I encourage collaboration in all the practical exercises that we do on the second half of the talks. So recent competitions that we did, we had the AWS Security Coding Challenge. Usually we organize for these events, but this event was organized in Circuits Slack, so that's the computer science clubs on campus. And it was advertised as a hackathon, but it wasn't a hackathon, it was just a CTF, that there were only 5 challenges. But we saw 4 out of 5, the 5th one was not solvable. But yeah, there was 3 teams, so 2 others besides us, who also solved it, so they had to end up raffling the prizes away. Matt Burke got an Echo, Michael Bailey got an Echo. This is pictures of us. Yeah, so that happened during break. News since last meeting. Usually I go over what happened in the last week in cybersecurity, because I know not everybody spends the effort to keep up on it. That's partially just because I know people show up late, and if I can spend 5 minutes or so at the beginning of each meeting to provide a buffer before I start the material, that's useful, because I don't want people showing up 5 minutes late and then the first slide being the most important slide and you don't understand everything else after that, and then people don't understand it because they came 5 minutes late. So that's the purpose of that. But I'm not going to go through news today because the entire winter break happened and a lot happened in cybersecurity, and we have other things to cover today. But in general, I will, and Michael will not do that. He's the other main presenter. So upcoming competitions and event, we have a CIA recruiting event. It's not run by us, it's just the CIA. But that's happening 6 to 8 p.m., so right after this in the Hub Ballroom. I know a lot of you are planning on doing that. And then there's Sheriff CTF, so that's February 2nd, I think that's Friday. That's online, that's Jeopardy format, so that's like I was explaining before. We have already a Slack channel, #SheriffCTF, so you can join that if you want. Next Wednesday's meeting, I'm not going to speak, Michael's not going to speak. We're going to have one meeting, and it's going to be Power Grid Security with PwC. We're going to have a guest speaker. PwC is a huge contractor around here. So he knows what he's talking about. I don't know anything about Power Grid Security. He should give it a good presentation. Then there's going to be Crypto Party, which is March 3rd. It's all day in the hub. So if you're interested in cryptography and you don't know that much about it, you can check it out. There's also 2 flyers for that over there. Okay, so wait, does anyone have any questions about what we do as an organization?
What was your name?
My name's Paul. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, cool. So right now we're doing recon and attacking hosts. These are the phases of attacks, so I should explain where recon fits in. This is called the cyber kill chain. If you speak to any professionals in cybersecurity, they'll let you know that, or at least most of them that I've talked to don't really like this model, and I'll explain why later. But it is one of the main ones, and it was developed by Lockheed Martin. So the first step in an exploitation cycle or in an attack is recon. That's gathering information. That could be scanning. That could be Googling. That could be a bunch of different things. But that's gathering information on your target. There's two types of recon. Well, yeah, there's two types of recon. There's two ways of breaking it up as well. There's active and there's passive. So passive would be like Googling about them, not doing anything invasive. Active would be like scanning with pings and like doing anything that they can detect as you're doing recon. And then you could also split it up in two other ways. You could split it up as you have a target and you're trying to find information about it, or you can split it up as you have an exploit, something that you can attack people with, and you're trying to find targets that your exploit affects. So two types of recon. Second phase is weaponization. So that's just like making your exploit or finding an exploit. Then there's delivery, so using it, and then there's a bunch of steps for this. This is why I have a problem with this model. And then there's having the exploit, running the payload, having it call back to you, and then action on objective. You'll notice that there's only one step for action on objective, step 7. That's going to be really long. Like, you could spend months on that and like a day on the rest of it. Also, if you're doing like a DDoS, this model doesn't apply. It's mainly malware focused, and so that's why people have problems with it. But I just wanted you to see like where recon fits in the cycle. So one way you can do recon is Google Dorks. They're called Google Dorks. That just means using special characters, special operators in Google. So you might recognize like the minus the hyphen symbol. That means ignore this word. So that's important because let's say you're searching for a command. You can't just, and the command uses switches. So like nmap -v. If you Google search nmap like -v, or especially if it's a word, it's going to search for ignoring this word. So you're going to want to delete those hyphens if you're searching for that. That's just an example. In URL, that searches for whatever you include after that colon. It searches for things only included in that URL. And you can do that for in titles, a certain file type if you're looking for like only GIFs or only PNGs or something like that. And you can limit that to a site as well. So some examples of using that maliciously would be Google searching in URL, root, etc, password, index, home, star. That searches for things that will be easy to exploit. Same thing for MySQL dump or Moodle, for example, that has some exploits out for it. There's a bunch of things on Google hacking. There's a database online of different things that you can enter in Google to find vulnerable hosts. So this would be an example of searching for these things. Or you have an exploit and you're looking for the low-hanging fruit, the targets. Another way to collect recon is Shodan. Shodan's actually, if you don't have a Shodan account, I recommend you get one. Sometimes you can get them as a student for free. Sometimes they cost like $6. They're for life. It's a pretty powerful search engine for devices, any device connected to the internet. How it works is it just scans the entire internet and it parses the banners that are returned to it by the devices. So it covers a lot of things. It covers routers, it covers printers, it covers power plants, gas stations, pumps, smart fridges. Check it out. It's pretty cool. It also has a nice API if you are into scripting. And you can integrate it with Metasploit if you want. So you can have Shodan find things and you can exploit it with Metasploit. A lot of times they have default login too. But like, don't try that with a power plant because that's illegal. Bing has an API. I discovered this recently. So if you're into scripting and you want to have a search function or you want it to search the internet, Bing's API is actually like a lot better than you would expect it to be. That's an example. It just returns like a JSON output of your search. So the main point of today, you could ignore all of what I said before besides the organization things about competitive cyber. This is what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be nmap, using nmap. It's a popular open source scanner. It tells you which hosts are up on a network. It tells you which ports are open, which services are running. It does OS fingerprinting. It does service fingerprinting. If you want to know more about nmap, there's a cheat sheet, and you can go to go.gmu.edu/nmap, and that'll take you to the cheat sheet of like what are the correct flags, so like switches, options for nmap. It's a command line tool. There's also ZenMap, which is the GUI version of it. I recommend you don't use that. I recommend you use nmap because it's not hard and we're not going to do anything complicated with it today. So if you don't have this, you should download it, or you should use Kali Linux or our Mason CVM, which you can find on Slack and our website, because those come pre-installed with nmap. So let's say you scan something. So you have a host or you have a network, and you want to attack hosts on it. So you find the host with nmap, and you find the FTP is open, for example. You now want to see what the vulnerabilities are in the services. So, for example, FTP, File Transfer Protocol. You see port 21 open. You know that FTP is running. You want to fingerprint the FTP server. So to find out if there's anything insecure about it, because they might be running a version with a vulnerability. So you would just run a flag in nmap, like -A or -lowercase s, capital B, and that'll print out the version of the service. And then you can Google that, or you can search up exploit DB, and they have a bunch of exploits, and that'll tell you which ones to use for that. There's also anonymous access. That's one of the first things that you can try. That's really easy. So some FTP servers, if the person managing it is stupid or does not care about security, then they'll just leave on anonymous access. That's literally logging in with the name anonymous and password blank. So if you see something else open, like HTTP or HTTPS, that's port 80 and port 443, that's what's happening in the other track this week. They have a website, and then there's like so many different ways to exploit that. We're not going to cover that in this case, but that's just another example. So if you want to learn more about service enumeration, there's actually this really cool article I found that it's like a cheat sheet. It's just like, well, okay, FTP is open, so these are like the 3 different things that you can do to it to enumerate the service. That's at go.gmu.edu/enumeration. So that's pretty cool. Is anyone lost yet? Okay. So you scanned it, you've enumerated the service, so like you know the version is vulnerable. Then what do? You use Metasploit. So Metasploit is an exploitation framework. It's written in Ruby. The GUI version is Armitage, and if you want to have a cheat sheet on Metasploit, you can go to go.gmu.edu/Metasploit. It looks like that. It's command line if you don't use Armitage, and you use the information that you had before that you gathered with nmap in conjunction with Metasploit, and it has a bunch of preloaded exploits, especially if you update, it stays up to date. And then you can use that to hack your host. So here's Metasploitable. I have Metasploitable 2. Metasploitable is an intentionally vulnerable virtual machine. I have it running on this, which is its SSID is CC members only. It doesn't connect to the internet or anything because we want to be safe. So what we're doing today is you're going to attack it. But I'm going to show you like successful ways of attacking it first, so you're not lost. Yeah, so its IP is 192.168.1.3. Don't hack it yet. I'm doing it first. So let's do nmap. Is that big enough? Can people see it? All right, cool. Huh? All right, there it is. So we got the port open. We got the state of it. So it only shows the one that are open. the service running, and because I did -sv, it shows the version of the service as well. So we got FTP. I explained how you can get in via that, or one example of how to get in via that before. Pretty much every one of these, not every one, but almost every one of these has a way into the machine. The most obvious is this one. It's a shell. A shell is running on one port, so like that's pretty easy. An example of how to take advantage of that. If you're on Linux, you can use netcat, and then just netcat into the IP 192.168.1.3, and then the port. And now I have a shell. So once you get in, and you can use telnet if you're on Windows. You would just do the same thing except instead of NC, you would use telnet. I put a flag.txt in the root directory of the computer of Metasploitable 2, and so if you ever get in, I want you to write your name into that file. I don't want you to overwrite it, so that we destroy other people's work and stuff. So you do that by doing like echo Paul 2 of the greater than signs, and then flag.txt. Now, okay, my name is in there. Add your name like that as well. Remember, this is the command, echo with 2 greater than signs. And then exit gets out of it. So let's go back and let's do a different way, because that's really obvious. That's super easy. Let's do a more legit way of getting in. So that shell, that was supposed to be a backdoor installed by like a Trojan. That's not a misconfigured service or anything. Like that no person would do that unless they were intentionally trying to let themselves back in later. Oh yeah, so how to get in via FTP. So we know that VSFTP is running. So let's start up Metasploit. This is Metasploit. Wait, just starting. It has new like different ASCII art that rotates all the time, so you'll see something different. So first thing we do is you set our host, and then that stands for remote host. That's what you're attacking. That's the target IP, which in this case is 192.168.1.3. And then you can do search VSFTP, because that's the service running. That's what we want to find an exploit for. So Metasploit says, hey, there's one exploit right here. So we're going to use that. So we type use, and then the paste to the exploit. But now we need to, well, first we need to set the localhost, my computer. So I need to find that IP, ifconfig. Which is 1.2. Oh yeah. So the most common payload is going to be an interpreter, which I would use on Windows, but in this case we're going to use this. And I put what I'm doing right now on this slide, and you can access these slides. So if you ever have questions or want to actually like do it and you have no idea how to do it, you can redo what I'm doing right now. So now we're setting the payload. So each Metasploit, when you're attacking something, there's an exploit and then there's a payload. The exploit gets you in the payload, like the exploit delivers the payload. And then once you've done that, so you type use exploit and set payload for Metasploit. And then once that's set, you just type exploit. And now, cool. Yeah, we're in. So that's an example of how to do it with Metasploit instead of just netcat with the shell open. Oh yeah. So if you don't have nmap or Metasploit, download those. Or if you have Kali Linux, you can boot that up. That already has those, or you can download Kali Linux. Or we have a VM pre-configured with a bunch of CTF tools and a bunch of other things. It's like Kali Linux plus CIF, if you know that. That's SAN's like forensic toolbox, plus some custom CTF tools. And that's at go.dmu.edu/MasonCCVM. The target IP for this exercise is 192.168.1.3. So you can join this network, CC members only, and then only attack that IP. Don't attack each other. Don't attack me. Don't attack the router. Don't overwrite the flag.txt. Don't be a dick. Like, just confine yourself to that IP. So if you want more resources or you want to see these PowerPoints, we have almost everything on our Google Drive, which is at go.gmu.edu/cctraining. And then the next link is if you're new and you don't know that much, or you want to see some more of our resources, or you want to know Linux. That's at go.gmu.edu/ccbeginners. That explains like a little bit about how our club is structured, and it points you to some decent resources for where to go to learn more. Our website is competitivecyber.club, so that's where you go if you want to join Slack or you want any other information. And if you don't want to do this exercise and you want to check out something else, we have our training CTF at tctf.competitivecyber.club, and that's Jeopardy style. That's what most of what we do in competition is. So yeah,
When are the competitions normally? Fridays, Saturdays?
over the weekend,
Sweet.
like all over the weekend, and then you choose whatever time you want over the weekend. So yeah, if you have a laptop, join the network. Go after Metasploitable too, or do tctf.competitivecyber.club. I encourage you to work together.
Let's see what else is
If you have any questions, let me know.